ਵਾਹਿਗੁਰੂ ਜੀ ਕਾ ਖਾਲਸਾ ਵਾਹਿਗੁਰੂ ਜੀ ਕੀ ਫਤਿਹ ਸੰਗਤ ਜੀ। ਅੱਜ ਅਸੀਂ ਪਹੁੰਚੇ ਹਾਂ ਕਿਸ਼ਨਰ ਸਿਮਟਰੀ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਬੁੱਕਮ ਸਿੰਘ ਜੀ ਦੀ ਯਾਦਗਾਰ ਤੇ ਅੱਜ ਇੱਥੇ ਸਿੱਖ ਰਿਮੈਂਬਰੈਂਸ ਡੇ ਦੇ ਮੌਕੇ ਤੇ ਪ੍ਰਾਈਵੇਟ ਸਰਦਾਰ ਬੁੱਕਮ ਸਿੰਘ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਯਾਦ ਕੀਤਾ ਜਾਏਗਾ ਅਤੇ ਹੋਰ ਵੈਟਰਨਸ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਕਿ ਆਲਰੇਡੀ ਇਨ ਦ ਲਾਈਨ ਆਫ ਡਿਊਟੀ ਹੈਗੇ ਆ ਜਾਂ ਜਿਨ੍ਹਾਂ ਨੇ ਆਲਰੇਡੀ ਆਪਣੀਆਂ ਜਾਨਾਂ ਇਸ ਦੇਸ਼ ਕੈਨੇਡਾ ਦੇ ਵਾਸਤੇ ਵਾਰੀਆਂ ਹਨ। ਦੇਸ਼ ਵਿਦੇਸ਼ ਜਾ ਕੇ ਭਾਵੇਂ ਉਹ ਮਸਲਾ ਲੜਾਈ ਦਾ ਹੋਵੇ, ਭਾਵੇਂ ਉਹ ਮਸਲਾ ਪੀਸ ਕੀਪਿੰਗ ਦਾ ਹੋਵੇ, ਭਾਵੇਂ ਉਹ ਮਸਲਾ ਕਿਸੇ ਹੋਰ ਕਮਿਊਨਿਟੀ ਦੀ ਰਾਖੀ ਦਾ ਹੋਵੇ, ਸਿੱਖਾਂ ਨੇ ਹਮੇਸ਼ਾ ਅੱਗੇ ਵੱਧ ਕੇ ਜੂਝ ਕੇ ਰਣ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਸ਼ਹੀਦੀਆਂ ਪਾਈਆਂ ਨੇ। ਤੇ ਆਓ ਆਪਾਂ ਇਸ ਸੈਰੇਮਨੀ ਤੇ ਅੱਗੇ ਚੱਲੀਏ। ਵਾਹਿਗੁਰੂ ਜੀ ਕਾ ਖਾਲਸਾ ਵਾਹਿਗੁਰੂ ਜੀ ਕੀ ਫਤਿਹ।
ਵਾਹਿਗੁਰੂ ਜੀ ਕਾ ਖਾਲਸਾ ਵਾਹਿਗੁਰੂ ਜੀ ਕੀ ਫਤਿਹ। Good afternoon and welcome to this very special ceremony for Remembrance Day. My name is Rupinder Kaur and I'm one of the Sevadars of the Sikh Remembrance Day ceremony. I'd like to invite you all to come and gather and join us now as we begin. You're all welcome to take a seat. I know they're a little limited, but I would ask that we offer our elders the seats if possible. Those who have come from near and far, we welcome you to this respected and somber space. We stand among the remains of war veterans and individuals who have sacrificed their lives for the freedom, security, and safety which we benefit from today. Keeping that in mind, I would like to request everyone to be mindful of the space that we are in today and to please be respectful when stepping among the headstones. मैं तुहानू सब नू जी आया कहंदी हां। तुहानू बेनती है कि आओ सारे इकट्ठे हो जाओ जी, सारे नेड़े नेड़े आ जाओ जी। बेनती है कि कुर्सियां बजुर्गां लई ਜਾਂ ਜੋ ਨਹੀਂ ਖੜ ਸਕਦੇ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਕੁਰਸੀਆਂ ਤੇ ਬੈਠਣ ਦਿਓ ਜੀ। ਇੱਕ ਬੇਨਤੀ ਹੋਰ ਹੈ ਕਿ ਇਹ ਸ਼ਹੀਦਾਂ ਲਈ ਸ਼ਰਧਾਂਜਲੀ ਦਾ ਪ੍ਰੋਗਰਾਮ ਹੈ। ਸਾਰੇ ਹੀ ਬਹੁਤ ਸ਼ਰਧਾ ਨਾਲ ਇੱਥੇ ਤੁਰਨਾ ਫਿਰਨਾ ਜੀ। ਇਹ ਜਗ੍ਹਾ ਖਬਰਸਤਾਨ ਹੈ, ਖਬਰਾਂ ਦੀ ਇੱਜ਼ਤ ਨਾਲ ਰਹਿਣਾ ਹੈ ਜੀ। To start this Sikh Remembrance Day ceremony, I ask that we all stand for Ardas, a Sikh prayer recited by Manveer Kaur.
ਵਾਹਿਗੁਰੂ ਜੀ ਕਾ ਖਾਲਸਾ ਵਾਹਿਗੁਰੂ ਜੀ ਕੀ ਫਤਿਹ। ਅਰਦਾਸ। ਇੱਕ ਓਂਕਾਰ ਵਾਹਿਗੁਰੂ ਜੀ ਕੀ ਫਤਿਹ। ਸ੍ਰੀ ਭਗਵਤੀ ਜੀ ਸਹਾਇ ਵਾਰ ਸ੍ਰੀ ਭਗਵਤੀ ਜੀ ਕੀ ਪਾਤਸ਼ਾਹੀ ਦਸਵੀਂ। ਪ੍ਰਥਮ ਭਗਵਤੀ ਸਿਮਰ ਕੈ ਗੁਰੂ ਨਾਨਕ ਲਈ ਧਿਆਏ, ਫਿਰ ਅੰਗਦ ਗੁਰ ਤੇ ਅਮਰਦਾਸ ਰਾਮਦਾਸੇ ਹੋਏ ਸਹਾਇ। ਅਰਜਨ ਹਰ ਗੋਬਿੰਦ ਸੁਮਨ ਸ੍ਰੀ ਹਰਿ ਰਾਏ, ਤੇਰੇ ਪਿਛੇ ਤੇ ਜਿੱਥੇ ਸਭ ਦੁੱਖ ਜਾਏ। ਤੇਗ ਬਹਾਦਰ ਸਿਮਰਿਐ ਕਰਨੋ ਨਿਧ ਆਵੇ ਧਾਏ, ਸਭ ਥਾਈ ਹੋਏ ਸਹਾਇ। ਦਸਵੇਂ ਪਾਤਸ਼ਾਹ ਸ੍ਰੀ ਗੁਰੂ ਗੋਬਿੰਦ ਸਿੰਘ ਸਾਹਿਬ ਜੀ ਸਭ ਥਾਈਂ ਹੋਏ ਸਹਾਇ। ਦਸਾਂ ਪਾਤਸ਼ਾਹਾਂ ਦੀ ਜੋਤ ਧੰਨ ਧੰਨ ਸ੍ਰੀ ਗੁਰੂ ਗ੍ਰੰਥ ਸਾਹਿਬ ਜੀ ਦੇ ਪਾਠ ਦੀ ਦਾਤ ਦਾ ਧਿਆਨ ਧਰ ਕੇ ਖਾਲਸਾ ਜੀ ਬੋਲੋ ਜੀ। ਇਹ ਨਮਾਣਿਆਂ ਦੇ ਮਾਣ, ਨਿਤਾਣਿਆਂ ਦੇ ਤਾਣ, ਨਿਓਟਿਆਂ ਦੀ ਓਟ, ਸੱਚੇ ਪਿਤਾ ਵਾਹਿਗੁਰੂ। Dear Satguru Ji, Creator, Sustainer, One abiding in all, we are gathered here today in your grace and devotion to pay tribute to the brave and courageous men and women who have in the present and past lived their lives on the line to uphold peace, justice, and freedom for our country and abroad. In honor of Private Bukam Singh, we are here to remember the over 83,000 turban-wearing Sikh allied soldiers who were killed and over 109,000 that were wounded in the world wars. Help us gather strength, inspiration, from their valor to serve our nation with pride and dedication. Please bless us to be inclusive in remembering the sacrifices of all diverse communities who have made Canada their home, all Canadian war veterans, and especially the Aboriginal communities on whose lands we now call home. Please bless this gathering, bless our local communities, bless this nation and all who call Canada home. Bless this continent, bless this earth, and bless all of humanity. In thy grace, may we resonate peace and love across this earth. We pray that we may come together as a global community to create a future where our differences can be resolved with respect, unity, and non-violence instead of guns and wars. Let peace fill our heart, our world, our universe. In thy name, may all of humanity abide in eternal optimism. In thy divine will, may peace and prosperity shine on all. ਨਾਨਕ ਨਾਮ ਚੜ੍ਹਦੀ ਕਲਾ ਤੇਰੇ ਭਾਣੇ ਸਰਬੱਤ ਦਾ ਭਲਾ। ਵਾਹਿਗੁਰੂ ਜੀ ਕਾ ਖਾਲਸਾ ਵਾਹਿਗੁਰੂ ਜੀ ਕੀ ਫਤਿਹ। ਬੋਲੇ Sonehal. Vaheguru Ji ka Khalsa, Vaheguru Ji ki Fateh.
Thank you, and you may be seated. Also just want to mention there's a special guest book being passed around, and if you have the opportunity, I would really encourage you to sign and be a part of this program in that way too. I now have the honor of introducing Sardar Sandeep Singh Brar for the call to remembrance. Sandeep Singh, if you don't know, is the creator and founder of SikhMuseum.com, and the reason that we are all here today at the gravesite of Private Bukam Singh, a gravesite and a story that was unknown until just 9 years ago. The goal of SikhMuseum.com is to research and preserve the rich Sikh history and to provide a world-class virtual online repository of the Sikh experience in the form of groundbreaking, detailed exhibits about various aspects of Sikh heritage. To hear Sandeep Singh tell us of how he came to uncover the story of Private Bukam Singh truly leaves one in awe. To speak personally, as a resident from Guelph, I am moved to hear the harrowing story of Private Bukam Singh, a story that took him around the world and ended up right here in our very own backyard. We'd like to thank Sandeep Singh and SikhMuseum.com for their tireless effort in honoring Private Bukam Singh's story and helping to spearhead this event along with the local Sikh community. Sandeep Singh ji.
Thank you, Rupinder. Vaheguru Ji ka Khalsa, Vaheguru Ji ki Fateh. When we first held the first Remembrance Day ceremony here 9 years ago, after discovering Bukam Singh's grave, at that time the ceremony was about offering Sikh prayers for the first time in 100 years at a fallen warrior's grave. And we had one Canadian Forces soldier at the time attend the ceremony. So you can see how it's evolved over the years to what it's become. What a journey Bukam Singh had. It's just incredible. It starts with his birth in 1893 in Malpur, Punjab. And then he makes his way as a young 14-year-old to British Columbia in 1907. And then eventually to Ontario in 1913. He's one of the earliest documented Sikhs living in Ontario at the time. And from here, he would go on to the muddy battlefields of Flanders with the 20th Canadian Infantry. And in a period of 1 month in 1916, he was wounded twice, once in the head and then he was shot. He was one of only 9 Sikh soldiers that were allowed to join the Canadian Army in the First World War. Many of the early Sikhs in Canada at the time were veterans, and when they tried to join, they were turned away. They were told, "Sorry, fellas, this is a white man's war. We don't want you." So he's also the Ontario Regiment. After his wounds in France, he was transferred to a series of hospitals, eventually in England. And then in 1917, he was brought back to Canada and brought here to a military hospital in Kitchener. And here his journey would finally end in 1919. And at that time, there was no Sikhs in this part of Canada. So the military buried him in that grave there, and they knew he wasn't a Sikh, so they didn't put the Christian cross on his grave as they do on some of the other soldiers' graves that you see here. And at the bottom of the grave, they normally, the family writes something, but because there was no family, the Canadian military wrote from Malpur, Punjab, at the bottom of his grave there. So in his brief 26 years, he had an incredible journey from Punjab to Canada to France to back to Canada. And his story is the story of us as a nation. He's just one soldier's story. There are countless soldier stories like that. His story is but one of 59,544 soldiers who never returned home to their families in World War I from Canada. Today, we're at this spot not only to remember Bukam Singh, but to remember the over 700,000 Canadian soldiers who have died in the service of our country over the 20th century and now the 21st century. And that's what I want you to think of when you look at that maple leaf on his grave. It's a very, very powerful symbol. It shows that many different people of many different backgrounds contributed to this nation and to the freedoms that we enjoy today. Bukam Singh is just one of them. And we're here at this special spot to remember them all today. Sikhs have a long tradition of military service. As mentioned, over 83,000 Sikhs of the British Indian Army gave their lives in the defense of freedom in the two world wars, fighting alongside their Canadian, American, and British allies. Almost every Sikh family has somebody who has served. And you see some of our veterans here today, and there's so many stories. I'd like you to tell you today one of those stories. This is the story of a soldier who was born in May 10th, 1924. He was born in Pind Puller in Muxar. And at the advent of World War II, he joined on May 5th, 1940 in Firozpur, the British Indian Army. He fought 4 major battles against the Japanese, starting in Thailand and into Malaysia, and against the Japanese. There was heavy casualties on both sides and very fierce fighting, he recounts. On his way to Malaysia in a military transport ship, he survived the sinking of the ship by Japanese airplanes. During the fierce Battle of Singapore, the soldier and 45,000 other troops of the British Indian Army were captured when Britain surrendered to the Japanese in 1942. He endured nearly 5 years of brutal torture and starvation in Japanese prison camps. He told me the Japanese would give them only 40 grains of unprocessed rice to eat per day. He said many got sick and diseased, and over the 3,000 which were in his camp, over 1,500 died of starvation and disease. He said the Japanese would constantly beat them, but he said the beatings the soldiers could take, but the starvation was the worst and most painful thing. A shocking true incident that he tells me about, which shows the barbarity of war, is that the Japanese would use the soldiers on suicide missions to defuse unexploded bombs which had been dropped by American airplanes. So they would have the prisoners dig an 8-foot deep trench around the bomb, and then they would send 2 of them into the trench to see if they could defuse the bomb. If they didn't, the bomb would explode, and then the Japanese would just cover up the trench. And he said when his turn came, him and another fellow soldier from Punjab were put in the trench, and he said the other soldier was a skilled tradesman, and he said, "You stand aside, I'm going to try to do this." And he was able to successfully defuse the bomb. And Babaji told me that, he was just a simple farmer. If he would have tried defusing the bomb, it would have probably gone off. And yet here he is, 75 years later, with us today, just because of that one incident. And it's quite incredible. So I'd like to introduce to you Subedar Bagh Singh Puller of the 14th Punjab Regiment, 5th Battalion. Subedar ji, if you could salute. There he is. So he's a a living part of our history. There's very few World War II veterans still left alive, so it is our chance to meet with them and to record their history and their experiences. So we've looked at the ancient past in terms of World War I and Bukam Singh. We've looked at the past in terms of our veterans. But Remembrance Day, when it initially started out in Canada, it was about remembering those who never came home. But over time, it's evolved now to also honor the service of our military today. So Remembrance Day is also about all the soldiers that you see behind me and their honorable service for Canada, because they put themselves on the line for us each and every day, whether it's in peacetime service or wartime service. And we're here to say thank you for your service today.
Thank you.
And I'd like to tell you a story about one of those soldiers. As I said, the Book of Remembrance, which records the fallen dead Canadian soldiers, continues to grow, unfortunately, whether in peace or in war. And the very last entry in that book was a soldier who was recently killed on April 25 this year, just a few months ago. And that was Sergeant Robert James Dinowitz of the Royal Canadian Dragoons. And Sergeant Dinowitz was from Kitchener here. He was raised here, and he attended Rocky Mennonite and Grand River High School. He loved sports, hockey, lacrosse, golfing, boxing. And Dino, as he was known by his friends, enrolled in the Canadian Armed Forces in 2005 at age 22. He was stationed at both Petawawa and Meatford as an instructor, and primarily as a armored crewman for the Royal Canadian Dragoons, his regiment. He served overseas in Afghanistan on 2 tours of duty in southern Afghanistan in the Kandahar area. At the time of his death, he was participating in a military exercise at Canadian Forces Base Wainwright in Alberta, and he was commanding a LAV-3 armored vehicle. It was snowy and on the gravel road, and there was a tragic accident with the LAV-4, and Sergeant Dinowitz was killed, and 3 other Canadian soldiers in the vehicle were also injured. Sergeant Dinowitz was only 34 years old. Each and every day, as I said, these men and women put themselves on the line for us. So today is a day where we can remember the past, but we also remember the present and what we owe these brave soldiers. Thank you very much. Waheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Waheguru Ji Ki Fateh. Thank you.
Thank you, Sandeep Singh. I now call upon Amanjot Singh and Isha Preet Kaur to recite the famous Canadian poem In Flanders Field by John McCrae, a Guelph-born poet, physician, author, artist, and soldier during World War I.
The poem In Flanders Fields was written during World War I over 100 years ago by one of Canada's most famous soldiers, poet, and doctor, Lieutenant Colonel John McCrae. Colonel McCrae died during the war, but his poem became so famous that is the reason that we wear the poppy as a symbol of remembrance each year. Canadian war hero Private Bukam Singh also has a special connection to this poem and Colonel McCrae. When Bukam Singh was wounded in the Battle of St. Louis on July 20th, 1916, he was taken to the No. 3 Canadian General Hospital at Blois in France. Incredibly, this hospital at the time was under the command of none other than Colonel McCrae. In fact, the two men may even have met each other. Isha Preet Kaur will now recite In Flanders Fields.
In Flanders fields the poppies blow, between the crosses row on row, that mark our place, and in the sky the larks still bravely singing fly, scarce heard amid the guns below. We are the dead. Short days ago, we lived, felt dawn, saw sunset glow, loved and were loved, and now we lie in Flanders fields. Take up our quarrel with the foe. To you from failing hands we throw the torch. Be yours to hold it high. If ye break faith with us who die, we shall not sleep though poppies grow in Flanders fields. Bole so nihal.
ਸਤਿ ਸ੍ਰੀ ਅਕਾਲ।
ਵਾਹਿਗੁਰੂ ਜੀ ਕਾ ਖਾਲਸਾ, ਵਾਹਿਗੁਰੂ ਜੀ ਕੀ ਫਤਿਹ. I now call upon Kuldeep Singh Bachar to recite the Act of Remembrance. Kuldeep Singh.
They all shall grow not old, as we are left grow old. Age shall not wear them, nor the years condemn. At the going down of the sun and in the morning, we will remember them all. Thank you.
We will remember them.
For those that are able to do so, please rise as we stand for the last post, followed by 2 minutes of silence, the piper's lament, the rouse, and the commitment to remember. Please rise. now call Gurjap Kaur and Sukhvinder Singh for the commitment to recite the commitment to remember.
Ils étaient jeunes comme nous. Ils ont servi en tout sacrifiant. À eux, nous promettons à travers le temps de porter leur torche et de ne jamais oublier. Nous nous souviendrons d'eux.
They were young as we are young. They served, giving freely of themselves. To them we pledge, amid the winds of time, to carry their torch and never forget. We will remember them.
We will remember them.
We now begin the official wreath-laying portion of the ceremony, and we will begin with our elected members of Parliament and representatives from the Government of Canada. So I call on the Honourable Harjit Singh Sajjan, our Minister of National Defence, along with his colleagues, the Honourable Bardish Kaur Chaggar, Minister of Small Business and Tourism. They are joined by their colleagues MP Raj Singh Saini, MP Marwan Tarbara, and MP Sonia Sidhu. I also call upon Linda Fateau to lay a wreath on behalf of Conservative MP Harold Albright. Next, I call upon our members of Provincial Parliament and representatives from the Ontario Government, MPP Diane Verneil, along with her colleague, NDP member of Provincial Parliament, Catherine Fife. I ask our friends from the media if they could please keep the pathway a little bit clear for our elected officials and military as they walk to the gravesite. Although the Mayor of Kitchener, Barry Verbonovich, sends his regrets for not being able to join us today as he's traveling abroad, I call upon Kitchener City Councillor and Acting Mayor Paul Singh to lay a wreath on behalf of the municipality. I now call upon the Mayor of Waterloo, Dave Wajarski, to lay a wreath on behalf of the city.
Laying a wreath on behalf of the Canadian Forces, I call upon Major General Hetherington, the commander of the Canadian Army Doctrine and Training Center, honoring Private Buckham Singh and all Canadian Armed Forces soldiers. Laying a wreath on behalf of Sikh veterans, I now call upon Subedar Phag Singh Puller, the 14th Punjab Regiment, 5th Battalion. Laying a wreath on behalf of the Royal Canadian Legion, Waterloo Branch, number 530, I call upon Steve Mann, Sergeant at Arms. Laying a wreath on behalf of the Royal Canadian Legion, Fred Geese Branch, number 50, I call upon Chris Pickering, the past president, honoring Private Buckman Singh.
Call the Sikh veterans again. They forgot. Sikh veterans once more. They forgot to come. After this. Yeah, they didn't go to bring the wreath. They're going to call them again here. Okay, I'll call them at the end after. Yeah. Oh, yeah, you can. Yeah. Call them there. Let me go. And then call the Sikhs.
Laying a wreath on behalf of the 1596 Royal Highland Fusiliers of Canada Army Cadets, I call upon Second Lieutenant McKnight and Officer Cadet Horn. Laying a wreath on behalf of the Waterloo Regional Police Service, I call upon Deputy Chief Kevin Thaler and Inspector John Goodman.
Call the Sikh veterans again. Call the Sikh veterans. Call them again. Sikh veterans, and then we're done.
Laying a wreath on behalf of the Golden Triangle Sikh Association, I call upon President Sardar Resham Singh Rana. Laying a wreath on behalf of the Ontario Sikhs and Gurdwara Council, Sardar Bhupinder Singh. This is the Ontario Sikhs in Gurdwara Council. On behalf of the members of the Sikh Motorcycle Club of Ontario, Sardar Inderjeet Singh Jagran will lay a wreath at the gravesite of Private Bookham Singh.
Call the six students again. They're still standing. Six students. They're next. No, they're next. Okay.
Last, but definitely not the least, on behalf of the young students of the Akal Academy in Brampton and the Mississauga Gurmat School, I call upon our future leaders to lay a wreath at the gravesite of Private Bookham Singh.
Ladies and gentlemen, at this time and point, I would like to call upon our Honorable Mr. Harjit Singh Sajjan, Minister of National Defense, to address us. It is a blessing to have Minister Sajjan representing the Government of Canada at today's Remembrance ceremony. He's not only the pride of all Canadians, but also the pride of many diverse communities around the world. Minister Sajjan is also a decorated Canadian Army veteran. Former Lieutenant Colonel Harjit Singh Sajjan was the commander of the British Columbia Regiment, the Duke of Connaught's Own, and has served overseas in peace and combat missions in Bosnia, where he was wounded, and 3 tours of duty in Afghanistan. Lieutenant Colonel Sajjan is the recipient of the Meritorious Service Medal, the Canadian Peacekeeping Service Medal, and the Order of Military Merit, among his many military awards. He is a great role model for our youth, and the Sikh community recognizes his dedication, integrity, compassion, selfless service, and humility in his service to the people of Canada and beyond. With this, I call upon the Honorable Mr. Harjit Singh Sajjan, Minister of National Defense, to address us. Mr. Sajjan.
ਵਾਹਿਗੁਰੂ ਜੀ ਕਾ ਖਾਲਸਾ ਵਾਹਿਗੁਰੂ ਜੀ ਕੀ ਫਤਿਹ Minister Chagar, members of parliament, provincial representatives, councillors, veterans, men and women of the Canadian Armed Forces, General Hetherington, thank you very much for being here. For all of you who are here, I stood here a number of years ago in uniform when I was the commanding officer of the British Columbia Regiment and got to take part in this ceremony. And I got to learn about the history of Private Bookham Singh. And little did I know of his history, but little did I know that where he was actually from. So it turns out he's from Malpur, Punjab. Well, I too I'm actually from a small village very close to Malpur as well. He came to Canada, I came to Canada, but that's where the similarity ends. I came in 1976. He came in 1907 at the age of 14. I had my parents with me. I had a roof, I had a community to support me. He came with no one. He came for a new life. And at the time, when we now look back at the Komagata that took place, that happened in 1914 when the Komagata was sent away. He enlisted in 1915. It just goes to show the dedication that he had for Canada, for doing the right thing, and for a sense of service. He survived in a new country, in a new culture, at a time when it was very foreign, at a time it was probably very difficult for him. Just imagine the age that he was at. So that is about when the similarities end. Imagine when he goes off to war. He's wounded and only returned back into combat a month later. He's wounded a second time, ready to return, but unfortunately he becomes too ill and he can't come back on the front line. And at 6, you all know the dedication of the warrior culture that has been bestowed on all of us, the women and the men. And he lived that life. So why am I sharing you that part of that story? Because, ladies and gentlemen, all of us here owe our gratitude, our prosperity to the giants. And there are no great giants and no greater heroes than the ones who give their life for their country and for the cause. So as Sandeep had mentioned, Private Bukam Singh is a representative of all those who have served, not only in the past, but who are currently serving now. And I had the privilege of going to the Vimy 100. And it reminds us what that ceremony was about. And next week, I'll be at the 100th at the Passchendaele battle. Private Bukam Singh, all those who gave everything for us, gave us a gift of freedom, a gift of prosperity. So as we remember now their sacrifice, I think it's important for all of us to remember and reflect upon, what are we going to do with this gift? So especially for the younger generation who looks at this sacrifice, I think all our former veterans, all those who gave their life, all those who were injured, they want you to succeed. They want you to live a good and prosperous life. They want you to reach the highest level of anything that you choose. They want you to get over your barriers. They want you to lead. Because, ladies and gentlemen, when Private Bukam Singh came to Canada, and all those after him, and all of us here today, I can put hand on heart and speak on behalf of everybody here. There's no other country on this planet that can say that everybody is welcome. Everybody who comes here can achieve the highest office of any profession if you work hard. That's what Private Bukam Singh represents. That's what everybody who sacrificed before represents. So when you look at all of us here today, and all of yourselves, the success that every single one of us has, and it measured in your own way, it's because of veterans like Private Bukam Singh who gave their all. So every single day is a life of us to live in this beautiful country of ours, to not only make it better for us, but also for the rest of the world. Thank you very much for giving me this wonderful opportunity to be here with you. Vaheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Vaheguru Ji Ki Fateh.
Folks, we are at the end of another wonderful ceremony. This has been 9 years in the coming, and we're so thankful for all of you who've come here. I would like to thank all our VIPs, our MPPs and MPs who've come for this occasion, our veterans, our CF personnel, cadets, the various sevadars who have helped in many ways, the many unnamed friends who have helped make this event possible, principals, teachers, and students and staff from the Waterloo Region District School Board who came specially for this occasion, and various other school boards, the local and Ontario-wide community who have come from far and wide, and braved the rain today to pay their respects. We in the Sikh faith at times have had the blessing of occasions, many parades in Toronto where the rain will hold off just for the parade time, and I think this has been one of those occasions. I'm sure we don't have too much more of that time, but we would love for you folks to, there's an actual proper photo op ceremony at this point, where we will ask the VIPs and the cadets and the CF personnel to be part of this photo-taking opportunity beside the grave of Bukam Singh. I want to thank everyone who's been part of this wonderful ceremony. Thank you to our leader. He's our in charge, Mr. Sandeep Singh Brar. I want to thank the local community, especially the Kitchener Gurdwara and all its members for all the hard work they put in. Sardar Kuldeep Singh Ji and many others who worked tirelessly to make this event possible. Thank you for all of you for coming from far and wide. Remember, next year's ceremony is always the Sunday before November 11th. So next year, please mark your calendars, and around the same time, we will have the ceremony. It will be the 10th anniversary as well. Harman Singh here is reminding us it is our 10th anniversary, so it will be a bigger event. Thank you so much for everyone being part of this ceremony. Vaheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Vaheguru Ji Ki Fateh. Bole So Nihal, Sat Sri Akal.
Sangaji, we are remembering our veterans here and all those people who are right currently on the front line, defending ourselves, making sure that we live in peace. We have armed officers from the armed forces here, Mr. Harms and Mr. Wigger. Welcome, sir. Any message for the Remembrance Day?
Yeah, this is our annual time of year to remember those who have gone before us and have given their lives for the defense of Canada.
You know, it's a big thing for our community to come and remember these people that give us the opportunity to live in this world today. And if it wasn't for the veterans and everybody given the opportunity for us to live in freedom and live unitedly like this, it's a really big deal.
How we can encourage kids from our community, and how we can encourage the parents to push our kids towards this line of service?
You know what? It's all in within. I know in the Punjabi and the Sikh community, being in the army and being an officer is a sign of respect. It's one of those things where everybody wants to live a life of respect and be treated respectfully, and you give respect to other people. So to give people, you got to give them the education, you got to give them the love and the support to tell them that, hey, listen, being one of these big officers gives you a lot of respect in the community, and that's the way to lead, and you can teach other people that as well.
Everyone should be proud of the history, whether it's Canadian history, Indian history. It's the military history, and especially military Sikh history, that we're concerned with at this grave right now at Private Bukam Singh. Everyone should be proud of what our successors have done for us, the sacrifices they went through just so they made sure that we were here in a better world, in a safer world, in a quieter, in a politically friendly world, right? So when it comes to Remembrance Day, make sure, take that moment of silence, appreciate the world that you live in right now is because of our elders and our veterans that have sacrificed their lives, gotten injured for us.
Thank you so much, officer. We wish you best of luck.
Thank you very much.
Well, this Remembrance Day, it honors and is held at the site of our fallen First World War soldier, Private Bukam Singh. It certainly has brought the Sikh community together, but continues to bring all Canadians of all walks of life together. We celebrate the diversity in the forces, and we hope to continue to grow it as we role model the service not just to our country, but to our faith by keeping the bana and proudly wearing the dastar. And these symbols in our uniform show that there are no barriers to service, that there is an element of inclusion, and when we're all included, we all move forward together.
After a successful function or a successful event, remembering all the veterans and all the current soldiers who put their lives down online for us so that we can sleep peacefully, we can live this life peacefully, and we can live independently in this wonderful country. We have our organizers here, Penji Rupinder Kaur ji, Virji Sandeep Singh ji, जिन्हों ने तन मन धन नाल इस इवेंट ਨੂੰ सक्सेसफुल बनाਉਣ ਵਾਸਤੇ ਸਾਰੀ ਸੇਵਾ ਕੀਤੀ ਹੈ ਤੇ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਤੋਂ ਜਾਣਦੇ ਹਾਂ what was their encouragement, what was their push to do such things and how they do it. ਤੁਹਾਡਾ ਸਵਾਗਤ ਜੀ।
ਜੀ ਵਾਹਿਗੁਰੂ ਜੀ ਕਾ ਖਾਲਸਾ ਵਾਹਿਗੁਰੂ ਜੀ ਕੀ ਫਤਿਹ। ਪਿਛਲੇ ਮੇਬੀ 4-5 ਸਾਲ ਪਹਿਲਾਂ ਸੰਦੀਪ ਸਿੰਘ ਜੀ ਨੇ ਮੈਨੂੰ ਪੁੱਛਿਆ ਕਿ ਮੈਂ ਇਸ ਪ੍ਰੋਗਰਾਮ ਦੇ ਨਾਲ ਥੋੜੀ ਸੇਵਾ ਕਰਾਂ ਤੇ ਮੈਨੂੰ ਐਕਚੁਅਲੀ ਬੜੀ I was very proud to help because ਜਦੋਂ ਮੈਂ ਆਪ ਥੋੜੀ ਜੀ ਖੋਜ ਕੀਤੀ ਕਿ ਪ੍ਰਾਈਵੇਟ ਬੁਕਮ ਸਿੰਘ ਕੌਣ ਸੀ ਤੇ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੇ ਕੀ ਕੀਤਾ ਸਾਡੇ ਕੈਨੇਡਾ ਵਾਸਤੇ ਸਾਡੇ ਸਿੱਖਾਂ ਵਾਸਤੇ ਇਹ ਬੜੀ ਫਖਰ ਦੀ ਗੱਲ ਹੁੰਦੀ ਹੈ ਕਿ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੇ ਜੋ ਕੁਰਬਾਨੀਆਂ ਕੀਤੀਆਂ ਉਹ ਸਾਡੇ ਲਈ ਕੀਤੀਆਂ ਪਰ ਸਿਰਫ ਸਾਡੇ ਲਈ ਸਿੱਖ ਲਈ but for all Canadians so that's such a proud thing to learn ਤੇ the fact that ਪ੍ਰਾਈਵੇਟ ਬੁਕਮ ਸਿੰਘ ਦੀ ਜੋ ਗ੍ਰੇਵ ਸਾਈਟ ਇੱਥੇ ਕਿਚਨਰ ਵਿੱਚ ਹੈ ਮੈਂ ਆਪ ਗੁਐਲਫ ਰਹਿੰਦੀ ਹਾਂ so it's like very close by ਤੇ ਮੈਨੂੰ ਪਤਾ ਨਾ ਸੀ ਕਿ ਇੰਨੇ ਪਹਿਲਾਂ ਤੋਂ ਸਿੱਖ ਇੱਥੇ ਕਿਚਨਰ ਏਰੀਆ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਇੱਥੇ ਪਹਿਲਾਂ ਰਹਿੰਦੇ ਹੁੰਦੇ ਸੀ
ਜੀ ਇਹ ਪੂਰੇ ਪੰਥ ਵਾਸਤੇ ਮਾਣ ਦੀ ਗੱਲ ਹੈ ਕਿ ਵਿਰਸਾ ਸੰਭਾਲਿਆ ਜਾਵੇ ਜਦੋਂ ਤੇ ਮਾਣ ਹੋਰ ਵੱਧ ਜਾਂਦਾ ਵੀਰ ਜੀ ਸੰਦੀਪ ਸਿੰਘ ਜੀ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਸਿੱਖ ਮਿਊਜ਼ੀਅਮ ਵੀ ਚਲਾ ਰਹੇ ਹੋ ਤੁਹਾਡਾ ਬਹੁਤ ਬਹੁਤ ਸਵਾਗਤ ਹੈ ਜੀ ਵਾਹਿਗੁਰੂ ਜੀ ਕਾ ਖਾਲਸਾ
ਵਾਹਿਗੁਰੂ ਜੀ ਖਾਲਸਾ ਵਾਹਿਗੁਰੂ ਜੀ ਫਤਿਹ ਮੈਂ ਕਹਿਣਾ ਸੀ that this grave ਇੱਥੇ this is really ਸਾਡੀ history in Canada it's so special it's the only military grave ਸਾਰੇ ਕੈਨੇਡਾ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ of a Sikh soldier from the World War so that's why ਅਸੀਂ ਇੱਥੇ ਸ਼ੁਰੂ Remembrance Day ceremony ਕਰੀ ਸੀ rather than in a park or elsewhere ਕਿਉਂਕਿ ਇੰਨੀ historic site ਆ there's not only I can think of Abbotsford Gurdwara from 1912 is older than this grave of Bukam Singh. 100 saal prani grave hai and you see that maple leaf on it. You feel such a sense of pride that ਅਸੀਂ ਵੀ contribute ਕਰਿਆ ਇਸ country ਤੇ the history and nation building and when people say well who are you as Sikhs you've just come here no we've been here 100 years and we have also sacrificed for this country so it's very important for ਸਾਰੇ Canadians as well as ਸਾਡੀ ਆਪਦੀ community to realize and have that sense of pride so that Remembrance Day when ਬੱਚੇ poppy ਪਾਉਂਦੇ at school they should feel that hey I'm also part of that history of remembrance